Hello, and thank you for joining us for day 12 of Architizer Future Fest. So those of you who've attended one of our previous talks, welcome back. And if this is your first event, then thank you for joining us. Future Fest comprises an epic series of 15 live talks with A+ award-winning architects from all over the world, forming a vibrant celebration of architectural innovation. It's also our way of warming up for the 11th annual A+ Awards, which opens for entries on October 17th this year. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Paul Keskies. I'm the editor-in-chief at Architizer, and today I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to chat with Ken Johnson and Micah Land of Hsu Office of Architecture, and Erin Lindsay, project manager of EQUITONE Facade Materials, as they present materials for the future of social housing. Now, while we wait for the room to fill up, I want to encourage you all to say hi in the chat box right of your screen and let us know where you're from. It's always amazing to see such a global audience. Here are a few quick pointers about our live platform. If you're having any technical difficulties with the stream, you can click on the help icon in the bottom left corner and you'll see a few options for improving your picture, the sound, and so on. It's worth noting that there will also be a recorded version of the talk, so you can catch up with anything you missed or share this with your colleagues after the event. Thirdly, questions. You can type anything you like in the chat, but if you have a specific question you'd like to ask, we recommend you use the questions tab. Just click on the questions icon on the bottom right of your screen and then type your question. If you see a question from someone else you'd be interested in hearing, you can upvote it, and we'll be asking the most popular questions a little later on. And finally, feel free to use the react button, as some of you already are, whenever you see something you like. To register for our future talks for the remaining week 3 talks, you can go to architizer.com and click on the top article. There you can scroll down, learn more about each talk, and click on the accompanying links to sign up for each one. And now I'm thrilled to introduce our panelists. Micah Land is a partner at Hsu Office of Architecture, where he has overseen dozens of projects since 2007. His projects range from fast casual restaurants to large mixed-use public realm and office developments. Notable projects include P. Terry's Restaurants, Bald Inn Creek, Lamar Union, South Congress Hotel, and Orchard Park, currently under construction in Houston. Micah leads the firm's information technology operations, and he is partner in charge of the Community First Tiny Victories project, which we're going to learn a little bit more about today. Ken Johnson is also a partner at Hsu Office of Architecture. Since joining the firm in 2014, Ken has overseen a range of both architecture and interiors projects. Ken's notable projects include Habitat for Humanity row houses, Plaza Saltillo, Home Slice North Loop, Academy Residence, 907 South Congress, and Uptown Sports, which is currently under construction. Ken has overseen a host of the firm's custom residential projects and is a team leader managing firm standards. And he is the partner in charge of the Project Transitions Burnet Place Apartments project. And finally, Erin Lindsay is a project manager for EQUITONE Facade Materials. Erin has spent the past 20 years representing manufacturers within the construction and architectural communities across the United States. For the past 10 years, Erin has been based out of Los Angeles, working specifically in the world of facades. And with that, I will pass the mic over to Micah. What have you got in store for us today?
Actually, I'm going to take over first, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. Sorry, to Erin first.
That's fine. So I'm just going to reintroduce myself a little bit, tell you about EQUITONE, and highlight a few social housing projects that we've been involved with across the globe. So I have represented manufacturers for my entire career. I worked for a long time for United States Gypsum, but found myself in a position where I needed to get back to the West Coast, and that's when I started working in the world of facades. So what's so wonderful and exciting about speaking about facade materials with the design community is those materials are really super influential on the aesthetic of buildings, but also the performance of the buildings. And I just find those conversations to be really inspiring. And I love kind of being the bridge between the artistic and engineering minds of architects and the practicalities of building materials. So that's kind of what inspires me. To tell you a little bit about EQUITONE, EQUITONE is part of a very large company called ETEX Group, which is headquartered in Brussels, Belgium. ETEX has about 13,000 employees across the globe, and EQUITONE sits in its exteriors division. EQUITONE manufactures high-density fiber cement panels in a facility in Belgium and in Germany. And what you're seeing on this slide is representations of the 5 materials that we manufacture. So what's really wonderful about working for ETEX Group is they do emphasize and invest and have a real desire to positively impact the communities that we are in. And they are dedicated to inspiring ways of living and supporting projects like social housing. So that's really important to our company. To highlight a couple of projects around the world that we've been able to support, we have examples of 4. The lower left-hand corner is a project in New York that we were able to participate in. The other 3 are in Australia, Spain, and Portugal. So social housing is really important to our company, and we were more than honored to be able to participate with Hsu Office of Architecture in the Tiny Victories project that we're about to hear from Micah about, and we are very excited to also participate with Ken in his project. So that being said, I will now pass the mic to Micah, and let's hear a little bit about your office and the projects and you.
No, thank you, Paul. Thank you, Erin. And it's nice to be here. It's great to be part of this really great series. So, yeah, our office is like founded in 2005. We're a very kind of active architecture and interior design office. We believe in kind of the collaboration of client, artist, artisan, builder as kind of a holistic experience. We tend to design with empathy in order to kind of elicit emotional response in our projects. We believe deeply in design as being very optimistic. We also think that it should be attainable to the greater public, that it can be for everyone. So a lot of our work ranges in size and scale from very large mixed-use urban public realm type projects all the way down to projects like this one, which is very small, or even a small juice bar, or a one-off type projects. So it's quite a range of work, and requires us to kind of adapt and be agile in the way we work, the processes we use, things like, working within budgets and materials that are attainable but also suitable. We dabble a little bit in branding, do a little branding work. We've started to kind of explore furniture design, bespoke furniture design, and landscape design. We recently, I guess pre-pandemic, opened a second office in Houston, and that's been really exciting for us to kind of grow into other markets. We also have work going on and all across the country, really. But yeah, that's a little bit about our office. Yeah, I joined, Paul, as you mentioned, in 2007, and one of the joys for me about working in this office is the range of work, and the projects that we do pursue is pretty varied, and there's an empathetic approach to the audience, the client, the artisan. So the Tiny Victories project, this was a really a little bit outside the box for us, because the client and the community first organization is, it's a nonprofit local kind of social outreach program here in Austin that has been helping the homeless for like 20 years, and they approached several architects in town to assist with the design, a kind of a prototypical design of this. It's like a 200 square foot tiny home for the homeless. Yeah, so you can kind of see a few pictures here, and we were surprised to be and thankful to be part of it. And it was a really interesting process, working closely with Community First, even the Richard, our kind of home client, and hearing kind of some of the challenges and needs for the project was really unique. So yeah. Yeah, here you can see, it's kind of a very simple form, a very kind of modest building type. For Richard, our client, it was more, you'd think, you know, some of the needs, we kind of have some preconceived notions of what it is to have a house. Our first initial impulse is lots of glass view, seeing beyond and outside. And in this instance, that was not the case. It was very much about having a sense of enclosure, very insular, a place of privacy and solitude and, rest and relaxation. It was almost armor in some ways. And so as an architect, that's an interesting, uh, you know, uh, set of properties to work with. And so a lot of our work was driven by those, needs. For Community First, it was more about, the challenges of maintaining a property with over 200 tiny homes, right? So questions about, durability, long-term maintenance costs, things that made their life, operations in the future much easier. So the materials chosen, EQUITONE, which was kind of the perfect material for this, really hit the mark and kind of providing this kind of sense of enclosure. So, as you kind of look through the project, it was more inward focused, right? So natural light was achieved by a large cupola at the top of the space, which brought natural light into the space, made it warm, feel, approachable, comfortable. A lot of the millwork and interiors were organized. Richard had a lot of things like it, for him being formerly homeless for 15 years, he had a lot of possessions that were very meaningful to him and were very guarded. But when we toured his kind of existing place early on, it was quite disorganized, and we had discussions about how to, what it meant for Richard to maybe have a gallery wall or a series of shelves that he could display. He had a really cool little mask collection that was really special. So a large part of the interiors was organizing these things, things from books, albums, artifacts. So the millwork became very important in how to kind of categorize. And the materials are all very durable. This is all, a Russian Baltic birch, clear sealed, very durable. It's not drywall that could easily chip and, scratch. It is a pretty formidable material on the interiors. There's no plumbing. They share kind of a nearby common area sink and kind of outdoor kitchen, as well as kind of common restrooms in the community. But one thing that was important to Richard was he really enjoyed playing video games, and he wanted a desk, but he also wanted a desk that could double as a dining room and for bringing a friend or two over. And so there's a lot of little things that kind of unfold in the space to kind of double. The bed kind of bedroom nook was, tucked in over to the corner is a little bit more of a more intimate, cozy space that we designed, whereas the rest of the project is, yeah, more open and airy. Yeah, and it's interesting to work on projects like this because the team, there is a limited budget. Community First, works very closely with Mobile Loaves and Fishes here in Austin, who raised a number of funds to help fund the project. Each team, I think there was probably about 6 teams that we were awarded a sum of money to execute, and I can tell you that sum of money did not go very far. So we had to tap a lot of our resources, colleagues, local artisans, EQUITONE, to help with labor. We ended up setting up a GoFundMe page, raised some monies there, a little bit of sweat equity from a number of us as well. So yeah, I think pretty much all the framing was donated. The labor, installation was donated. Windows at discount cost. A number of different things and measures to kind of see this through. So yeah, it's I think that's a large part of social housing in like this, is the ability of a team, a design team, a build team to kind of lean on their resources in a way to help execute a final product, which is different from capital A architecture. That's a very different approach to the work, and we've kind of found that on a few different projects now, having kind of explored this more so. But let's see what else. Yeah, I'd be happy to kind of take some questions if you guys would like.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Micah. I absolutely love how you described the architecture as being like armor. This idea that architecture can almost be an extension of somebody and kind of protect them and make them feel stronger and give them a foundation to kind of do other things in life. It's a really nice descriptive word. I would love to sort of learn a little bit more about what surprised you about this project. Was there any sort of challenge that came up that you weren't expecting? And also, did you have any sort of pleasant surprises where something went better than you expected, or you had a reaction maybe from the client that was a nice surprise?
Well, yeah, I mean, hearing that from a client was definitely a surprise. It was not the way what I'd originally expect. So there was that, but then also Community First, their needs, were very kind of strict, and the kind of paint you used, the stain you used, what they had in stock in their barn that they had gathered. So there was a lot of little things about like lowered maintenance costs. You can imagine operating 200 homes and maintaining that for displaced or formerly displaced homeless people. So a lot of it was definitely a surprise, the amount of durability we had to consider, but also the Richard's need for a very armored insular structure. One thing that was really pleasantly surprising was the fact that we were able to, I mean, this little small project took probably a year and a half, 2 years to finalize, to realize. I know that, and that's a very long time, but to know that we were able to kind of contribute some thoughtful design to, folks that are a little less privileged, and to see this be able to be something that could be repeated was definitely a pleasant surprise for our office. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really it's a really powerful thought to remind ourselves that architectural innovation and kind of design creativity doesn't have to be limited to those high-end projects, and it can be brought in throughout, and even with a lower budget. And what you said about budget was, yeah, it sounded like it was a challenge for sure, but it's another creative challenge, isn't it? I wonder if you can tell us a little bit more about how EQUITONE kind of helped you in terms of the economics of the project, and what kind of qualities did you gain from using material like this on the exterior?
Yeah, well, we're very familiar with EQUITONE in the beginning, and we were searching for a project that one had some kind of textural opportunity. Our office, we tend to kind of reimagine materials in a way, enjoy pattern making and exploring certain motifs that might evoke a sense of emotion or joy on a facade. EQUITONE was unique in the sense that, one, it's a highly durable material, fiber cement board. The chemistry of it is impenetrable. It was nice to, use this. The climate here in Austin is, buildings are very vulnerable. The UV is very powerful. It's a very kind of hot, sometimes humid climate. So we do a lot of rain screen assemblies, and the EQUITONE product worked really nicely in the sense that we applied it in a rain screen application. This was I think it was called the Linea series with EQUITONE. It has a kind of a deep router score. Once you kind of get up closer to it, I think one of our images might show it a little bit more in detail. Yeah, you can see it has a really pretty linear line work to it. So yeah, plus the color was great. We wanted almost a monochromatic. We didn't want to be loud. It's interesting how color lives out there in the community. So in our case, it felt more appropriate to be kind of quiet and not loud. And so, the roof material, the EQUITONE, pretty much drove those decisions. But all the while, the interior is warm, inviting, comfortable. So it's kind of an interesting approach. But
yeah, I love the contrast between the exterior and the interior. It's like it almost feels like a shell, and you kind of break the shell open when you go in, and you can see this kind of incredible warmth on the inside. But yeah, this is obviously a very economical and practical solution, but it's also very elegant at the same time. So I think it's a great reminder to us that, yeah, budget doesn't have to negate elegant architecture, for sure. So yeah, perhaps we can move on to Ken now, and maybe hear about another project that you've been working on recently.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Paul and Erin and Micah. It's really great to be able to participate in this and talk about design, but that is not limited to kind of an elite subsect that can afford it, but for everyone. Like Micah said, we really pride ourselves in trying to make a design approachable and believe that it has a really positive effect on everyone's life. And so for us to be able to have a small piece in that and have the ripple effects be felt, years down the line, it's really great. This project is a little bit larger, but the home sizes are about the same, oddly enough. So this is a project for Project Transitions. They are dedicated to serving people with HIV and AIDS in the Austin area through supportive living, housing, recuperative care, and hospice in compassionate and caring environments. So to that end, that's their mission statement. They provide compassionate and caring environments, affordable transitional housing for HIV positive individuals and their families with wraparound services by professional social workers. And each resident has a personalized transition plan to help them attain the skills and resources needed to live independently. So this is not this is not a place, this is not a hotel or sort of a kind of a step from transitioning from homelessness on your own. This is a very supportive facility with on-site help, kitchen, and all the services that might be needed to kind of join a society of folks that are going through similar issues. And as probably most of the people watching know, that rents are becoming less affordable kind of across the country and the world. But in Austin, the rent for a one-bedroom apartment is 75% greater than the entire supplemental Social Security income payment. And so we've heard from the folks at Project Transitions that this is an unapproachable rent level, combined with their chronic health issues that from the population that they serve, can be a death sentence. And so they really have been great working in the community to provide housing at increasing levels over the years. And so they started with Doug's House in 1989, and then opened a Roosevelt Gardens, which was a small apartment complex, in 1995, and then Highland Terrace in 1998, and then our Burnet Road project, which fingers crossed opens in 2023. And they just recently opened another apartment complex in 2021 around the corner from this. So we're very fortunate to be on one of the trailing projects where they've learned a lot of lessons about how to be a nonprofit and be a developer. And so fortunately, we've learned a lot from them and their connections in the community on how best to serve the population. And so some quick stats on this building. You can see it's on approximately an acre of land. It's 3 stories tall. It is wood framed, which is pretty typical for apartment complexes in Texas. There's 61 units in the project. They're all deeply affordable to meet the mission, and they range in size from 264 square feet to 468 square feet, all one bedroom and studio apartments, which serves the community that they've done, obviously exhaustive studies over the last 40 years on the constituents that they're trying to serve. And that was the need, is those apartment sizes and groupings. So it's about 40,000 square feet, and we ended up with about 16 parking spaces. And as you might imagine, there's funding sources from all across the spectrum, from the City of Austin, the Federal Home Loan Bank, the TDHCA, which is a Texas supportive housing organization. And so with that as the background, we dove into this like any other design project, where we met with the owners frequently, met with the board and staff of Project Transitions to understand the needs from both sides, both from the end user and from their position as an operator. And how can we make sure that we understand as best we can what each of their goals and needs are. So this is a really inwardly focused building with a lot of courtyard spaces and kind of compact spaces, so that the folks that are inhabiting the building can find solace, because it's as we learned, this might be someone's first place to be housed after they've been experiencing homelessness. And so it's kind of a big step psychologically, and we didn't want it to lead it to be unsuccessful, because we treated the design as if we would treat it for someone that had been living in an apartment for many years. So it's one of those kind of aspirational aspects of housing that we talk about, all the way from custom housing to apartments, of how can we use design to help someone either continue their lifestyle or improve. So it's those discussions that led us to this. And there's a lot of concerns too for safety and visibility, and more so than a typical apartment complex. But you'll notice there's we wanted to break down the scale of this as well. There's more efficient ways to lay out apartment buildings, but we kind of wanted to make sure that this wasn't obviously affordable housing, just because it's nestled right in the center of a kind of old neighborhood. And there's, as sad as it is, there's always pushback to apartments in established neighborhoods, as well as affordable housing. And we thought that this is a great opportunity to hopefully design something that is embraced by everyone and keeps it a little bit low, but also embraces the density along what's a busy corridor on Burnet Road. And so you can see this is close to grocery stores, bus stops, some of the amenities that would allow folks to regain some of their autonomy without having to drive or get a ride somewhere unnecessarily. And then some of the design features you see as well are native Texas terracotta. We have some fiber cement that we can talk about in a minute. And then we have one of the most fun things was to try and get a screen porch in between the two buildings that takes advantage of the natural ventilation and the wind that'll come through. And we're more worried about the summer heat than the winter cold. So getting a little bit of ventilation through that courtyard helps dramatically for folks that want to use it through our 9 months of summer weather. And so that hopefully, because we've learned that the residents may want to spend more of their time outside than in the rooms, we wanted to create a number of different experiences throughout the courtyard, and then kind of at different levels, so they could choose where and when to spend their time. And then on the lower level, we've also included kind of a group gathering hall, along with the supportive housing caseworker offices, and then check-ins and all the trappings of normal apartment complexes for people to have packages delivered and have meals prepared and take the trash out, and all those things kind of on the left side on the first floor. And worked with our normal slate of consultants on this, who were all very excited to reduce their fees a little bit, so that we can all make sure that the most money that the project transition spends goes towards their mission. And so worked with the same civil engineer that we would work with on any housing project, the same landscape architect, same structural engineer. They're all very supportive. We didn't experience anyone that kind of looked down their nose or acted too busy. I think it was actually the opposite. It was a great opportunity for us to all feel like it was a little bit even more meaningful than a normal project. So we're very excited, and the contractor that's been selected is very experienced in building apartment complexes, and so that was part of the selection criteria, was to make that as efficient as possible, so that when we do have a special moment like the murals or the terracotta tiles, that can still be affordable, rather than kind of spending the money on contractor learning how to build with bricks and sticks. So this was, I think, if we wanted to go into a few of the questions, I'd be happy to answer a few of those.
Sure. This is another really powerful project. And I know that there are other firms that would be really interested, I think, in getting involved in this kind of work, but maybe don't know how to kind of begin that process. So I'm wondering, how did your firm first become involved in this project?
Oh, that's a great question. This was coming right on the heels of both Micah's project and the Habitat for Humanity project. And so what it really was is the developer that was working with Project Transitions to secure some of the financing was friends with one of the partners at our office. And so first brought that to our attention and wanted to know if that was something we'd be interested in. And we, jumped on the opportunity. They'd worked with other architects in the past, and it wasn't that they were dissatisfied. They just liked to have a little bit more diverse experience, and they've been treating this kind of as a showpiece for their organization. Not that it should cost more or it should be more expensive, but they wanted this to really bring awareness to what they were doing, kind of amidst the challenges in Austin in particular. And so it's that sort of community involvement that we really encourage, and it's great that we don't just have to do it on our own time. It's something that we can foster the connections in the community, bring those connections and those opportunities to the firm, and then have them be embraced. So I think that's one of the best ways to get involved, is to just get involved with projects like this, is to get involved with the community, with things that are interesting and people that are doing good work, and the opportunities will follow.
Great advice. Absolutely makes sense. And in terms of the permitting and planning process for this kind of project, was your firm instrumental in permitting under the Affordable Unlocked Development Bonus Program via Austin's Land Development Code? And can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Sure. That's one of the more exciting parts of this development. Well, from a permitting, land use nerd perspective. But we were one of the first projects. We were the first, and then we got kind of piggybacked by another project. But one of the first projects to go through the Affordability Unlocked code change, which just kind of slipped through. As Austin's been trying to revise its entire land development code for almost a decade now. But this was a huge step in the right direction. And so this is an awkward site, which is kind of all we have in Austin, where on this face, it fronts a very busy street in Burnet Road, but it's a through lot, which means that it connects to another street on the backside, which is actually a very low speed, low traffic residential street. And so it also actually has two zoning categories that split it down the middle. One being a low density commercial retail, and one being single family residential. So but no lot lines. It's just a zoning line. So we used the Affordability Unlocked provision to kind of bring all that back together. And the Affordability Unlocked is really great because it allows you to add density, add bulk, reduce parking, and eliminate compatibility. As Austin, some of y'all might have heard that Austin has a very kind of robust compatibility setback program, which means you can't build tall buildings anywhere close to even lot lines that are zoned single family. So by providing affordable housing, it unlocks these opportunities. And so this allowed us to increase the square footage, increase the height, increase the density, and reduce the parking, so that we're not trapped by providing parking for a demographic that frankly doesn't have cars to park. And so when it's something like this, it's very specific. It's great that we're able to work with the city and the developers to get a project like this through. And so we worked with the City of Austin housing departments, transportation departments, the developers, some consultants pro bono, to make sure that we jumped through all the hoops and got this through permitting. And I think as the process matures, the promise is that it's not only less expensive but also faster. And so it's a normal 12-month permitting process where the hope is that it would knock it down to 4 or 6 months as the project matures. But yeah, it's a very exciting opportunity in Austin that can be applied at any level.
Awesome. I think you've spoken a little bit about this already, but can you sort of talk a little bit about the biggest differences between a supportive housing project like this and a conventional multifamily project?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, this is, I mentioned that that our approach doesn't really change, which is wonderful, and we get to, apply the same design rigor that we would apply to any project. It just with different constraints, and so a lower budget or availability of materials is just another constraint. Same with analyzing the demographics, and so I think that was really the biggest change from doing a conventional multifamily project is we kind of understand the normal demographics that are spread on the typical apartment complex. Our developers have made those clear to us, but in terms of design approach and material selection and pattern exploration and interior and exterior finishes, we're seeing a lot of similarity between the overlap of designing for supportive housing versus designing for market rate housing, kind of at a similar level. Obviously, high rises are a little bit different story, but anything that's stick built has a lot of these same constraints in terms of form making, material application, and stacking of units for efficiency.
Great, that makes a lot of sense. And in terms of materials, are there any differences with your use of EQUITONE for this project from the Tiny Victories project? What drew you to that material in this scenario?
We actually had, after the Tiny Victories project, we had made really good connections with EQUITONE, and so we were designing this project with kind of touch points and then common materials in mind. And so a lot of the common themes when we're designing projects are what you have to put a little bit nicer material or a little bit more thoughtful material where someone can walk up and touch it, or if they see it every day. Whereas if it's viewed from a distance or on a multiple stories up, the project needs to be a little bit more robust and lower maintenance. And so that was the approach that we were taking here. And because fiber cement is such a common material in multifamily housing in Texas, we just planned for a kind of a normal fiber cement material, whatever was available. As some of the larger manufacturers had supply chain issues, I think as we all know. But then EQUITONE reached out to us, and based on the success and the positive feedback of Tiny Victories, they were like, hey, we had some material that for one reason or another was not able to be used on another project. Do you have anything that we could use it for? And this was at a perfect time when we were wrapping up kind of the design development phase. We said, yeah, we do. We absolutely do. And so just started the conversation from there and ended up with a much more robust, EQUITONE being a through body color product that doesn't need periodic painting. We ended up with a much better product, we think, for the owner that we normally wouldn't have specified just from high first cost. But what we're finding is that the other fiber cement kind of conventional manufacturers are getting more expensive. And even after you look at the amortization over a couple of years, it probably makes more sense to get a little bit higher first cost in return for the lower maintenance across the life of the project. And with a client like this, that's a build and hold, developer, they're not a developer. They're social housing. So when they look at it, it just makes sense for them because they've been in the maintenance business for 40 years. And so when they look back and they're like, oh, well, we can increase our siding budget of, percentage points in return for reducing the amount of time that we either have to, build scaffold or have our maintenance guys up on lifts, that makes all the sense in the world. And so it was a pretty easy sell kind of on the tail end of that, and helped us think about broadening the range of materials that we would normally think of for multifamily. So it was kind of an exciting conversation to be having on all fronts.
Wow, I love this this kind of collaboration, really close collaboration between architects and manufacturers, to the point where you can actually have a conversation like we have leftover materials, and what can you do with it? That's a really interesting, like, new creative avenue. I've never really heard of that close to collaboration before, so I really love that.
That's just to build on that. I think that's where Micah mentioned it a little bit on the Tiny Victories, but even in Habitat for Humanity on this project, the tile on the ground floor is from a local manufacturer that we specify on just about every project because we love their products, and then that allows us to pick up the phone and call them and say, what do you have left in the warehouse? We have 400 square feet of tile we need to fill. What can we do? And more often than not, it leads to them just donating tile for the project. And then same with local custom lighting manufacturers or steel workers. It's some of these artists and artisans and manufacturers that we've built relationships with over the last couple decades that are just excited to be involved. And it's through those relationships that we've built on full cost projects that allow them to jump in whenever we have an opportunity to do something that's great for the community, to put that foot forward. And it's not necessarily owner driven or contractor driven. It's really one of those ways we can flex as architects and get really great design, but not have to sacrifice budget or the bottom line or comfort for the residents.
Yeah, I love that. That's it's very refreshing, kind of circular conversation and circular processes going on. And then, yes, speaking of EQUITONE, Erin, I wonder if you can tell me a little bit more about how your company serves to support supportive housing projects in particular. You got
I realized I was on mute. Yeah. First of all, we have a vested interest and really want to work on supportive housing projects. So that's first and foremost. But the way that EQUITONE specifically serves these projects, I think we're well covered by both Micah and Ken, in that our panels, we have white papers saying that they'll last for over 50 years on a project without any type of maintenance. And that's really important to institutional type or holding developers or anyone who's going to have to maintain a facade. And it's just something to remove from the headache of maintaining social housing projects. I think that, and Micah mentioned the health of a rain screen, having a breathable exterior envelope is a healthier building and is better for the occupant. So that's a really important part of supportive housing, is to make sure that you're presenting the most healthy environment for these people who had been underserved in their past. And I think even you mentioned, Paul, these are beautiful materials, and being able to create a aesthetically pleasing and beautiful and kind of elevated exterior for those who maybe haven't had that exposure before is also just a really great opportunity. And again, we are more than honored to be able to participate in these types of projects.
Great. And what about the future? What are you guys working on? What can we expect in the future of product development at EQUITONE?
I think that it's important to note that EQUITONE has always been driven by the design community. So we ask architects and designers what they need, and then we develop in that way instead of making something up and trying to convince you to use it. So that's a really great flow of creative ideas. And we definitely, thank goodness, listen to the design community. And what we've been hearing, and our whole world has been hearing, is how important sustainability is. So the future of EQUITONE is going to be like hyper transparency in our sustainable approach to our materials. And what's a really interesting thing that's starting to happen in Europe, and I think we're probably 20 years away from this, is our projects that are aging in Europe, we're starting to see a full circularity. So it's possible to take one panel from an older project and reapply it to a new project. So we're concentrating on keeping our materials out of landfill. That includes being really smart about your panel design and using as much of your panel as possible, so eliminating waste there, but also reusing a panel that had been living on a building for 30 years. It has, you know, more than 20 years left, so why not use it on another project? So urban mining, I think, is a really interesting future in materials for sure, and that's kind of what we're cooking up, I think, at EQUITONE. Urban
mining. I've never heard that. That's awesome. I'm gonna remember that one. It's in keeping with adaptive reuse, the rise of adaptive reuse projects that we're seeing on Architizer as well. So it kind of fits in perfectly with that. So yeah, we don't have too long left, but I'm just going to pick out a couple of questions from our audience. Thank you everybody for asking so many questions, and if we don't manage to get to all of them, if you are all okay with it, I'll send you some questions via email as well, and you can answer them at your leisure too. So Philip asks, and I guess this can be directed at Erin, but if Micah or Ken have input as well, you feel free to add. How did all of this hold up with the snow and the challenging environment that you all received recently? Are things like climate change and the possibility of snow and lack of electric infrastructure impacting on your work or planning in Texas? And I guess, like, in terms of EQUITONE, I'm wondering whether the changing environment is kind of making you think more about what kind of resilient qualities that your product has or may need in the future.
On the EQUITONE side of things, our panels have been installed above the Arctic Circle and in Saudi Arabia. So that type of weather isn't at all going to affect the cement panel. You have to plan for movement in your exterior envelope. So the way that you're attaching these panels to the buildings, you need to plan for a lot of expansion and contraction, so that we do that through our engineers. But if Micah and Ken want to speak to Texas and how the more extreme environment there is influencing your design, I'm sure we'd all love to hear.
Sure. Well, not a whole lot of snow in Austin. No. We're lucky to maybe get an inch once every 2-3 years. But the question about lack of electric infrastructure is an interesting one here in Texas, where, you know, I don't know if many of you know, but we've experienced some rough power outages, and has taught us a number of things about power. So during the design process, I think we've become a lot more empathetic to how much power a building's using, and opting for design decisions that maybe we previously might not have. So, you know, thinking about, like, you know, we work a lot with some energy consultants about, you know, the type and efficiency type of system for, you know, cooling the house, which, you know, having a really hot climate here, you know, maybe negating the more robust system for more passive ventilation and cooling through, you know, operable windows, similar to what Project Transitions is doing with the screen porch. But also things like backup power, and how to, you know, on-site generation, solar, ways to, I know this is deviating a little bit from the material, but it is an interesting question about energy, and I think we all need to be, you know, weary of it. So yeah, Ken, feel free to add. But
yeah, exactly right.
There's another question, and I don't really know again who to ask this to, but maybe Erin, on the material innovation side, have you considered the 3D printing technology for fiber cement? Is that something that could be done with your materials?
I mean, I am not on the factory floor very often, but the technology we use to make fiber cement was invented in 1902 and does a pretty good job. It's also very efficient. So I can't speak to whether or not 3D printing panels would be more efficient than a hat check machine, which is the technology that does it now. I know that the capital cost of creating new manufacturing technology is huge. So that's a discussion that's much above my pay grade. Hope that helps.
I think it may be the question was about some of the other 3D printing technologies that 3D print walls, which is interesting. And, we have a local company in Austin that does a lot of that work and is, always trying to innovate. So it's super interesting. And, we'd be happy to work with any constraint. That's just one other constraint that's an opportunity for design exploration. And it would be exciting. But I think we may have done a little bit, speaking of kind of optimized technologies, we may have done a little bit of CNC milling on the Tiny Victories project also to get that pattern making. And so working with kind of CNC studies to optimize the material usage, but also get a really interesting pattern. And so if we're talking about low waste operations, but that add a whole lot of value to the overall visual impact of the project, those are one of the really great opportunities we look for.
Yeah, the 3D printing is an interesting proposal, as Ken mentioned. There's a whole new set of limitations, but also creates a whole new set of kind of design opportunities. The Community First project, they actually have, I want to say about 10 or 12 concrete printed homes on their site as part of their kind of 200 homes. And they're interesting, they check the boxes for long-term durability. They actually have a really interesting, aesthetic and textural quality to them. But yeah, I mean, I think it's somewhat in its infancy right now, but certainly a lot of opportunity for projects like social housing or these types of projects. So it'll be exciting to see where that goes. So
yeah, I love the kind of bringing together of technology and material innovation to kind of not just create beautiful architecture, but also to think about the ways in which they could be used to impact communities in a positive way. And I think, we're unfortunately running out of time, but I think that these two projects are incredible, very powerful examples of that, how architects and products can come together to create better spaces for people of all demographics. I really appreciate everything that the three of you have taught us today. You've taught me a lot for sure. And thank you to everybody in the audience also for joining us. Thank you for EQUITONE, who is a partner of Future Fest. You've helped make all of this happen, so really appreciate it. And to Micah and Ken, look forward to seeing your next projects, and also hopefully telling the story of those projects in the upcoming months. And yeah, I'm sure we'll do this again. So thank you so much. For everybody that's still with us, please join us tomorrow. We're going to be talking about actually 3D printing, funnily enough, and some other technology to utilize salvaged materials in architecture. So really looking forward to that. Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Paul.
Bye, everyone.